cry. But saying that would be futile. Nobody would let him take in a couple of pups. I can take them, he said anyway, because he had to try. No one replied, and he did not have the stomach to look up to see the expression on their faces. The only thing that kept him from lashing out or retreating was the steady hand on his shoulder. Come on, his mother said quietly. Let's get this done. Schuyler threw some things into an overnight bag, packed up his laptop, put on his winter gear, then reluctantly followed them outside to the waiting cars. Brady squeezed his shoulders, leaning in to press their foreheads together. It'll be okay, I promise, he said quietly. Schuyler nodded, but did not reply, so he watched as Brady walked away to ride with his mother. He settled into the back of his parents' SUV, holding the pups close as they drove. His parents tried to draw him into conversation, but Schuyler shook his head, and they finally left him in peace. Schuyler gave up shoveling the walk halfway through. What was the point? Nobody was coming to visit him, past Brady, who was just picking him up so they could turn right around. Nobody ever visited except for his family, and they were all snowed into their own houses. He wondered again if he shouldn't have taken up his mom's offer to stay with them, but just thinking about the sympathetic looks and the talks made him want to punch something. He didn't want sympathy or reassuring talks or empty assurances he'd have his own kids someday, and he shouldn't worry so much. He wanted Hansel and Gretel. 2 weeks after being made to return them to their pack, the wound of their absence was still raw and gaping. Throwing the snow shovel on the front porch, Schuyler stomped inside and left his winter gear in the entry hall. He headed to his bedroom and stripped off his clothes, leaving them where they landed, then padded into the bedroom and cranked the shower as hard as he could stand it. The only bright point to his day, week or life, was that Brady had called him to say he was finally able to slip free of all the pack trouble to make good on their date. Schuyler had been afraid at first that maybe he'd changed his mind, but working up the nerve to call had turned up a very frazzled, exhausted Brady, who was beyond happy Schuyler had called him, and sorry he hadn't called himself. A few days after that, Brady had called back to arrange a date. Schuyler finished showering and climbed out, dithering over the meager contents of his closet, before finally going with his good jeans, a white collared shirt, and a dark brown sweater with bits of pale gold threaded through at random points. Pulling on his good boots, he dragged out his good coat and headed for the living room. Since Brady lived a few hours away, he'd suggested Schuyler just come and stay for the weekend, if he was willing, and didn't think that was too much for a first date. Schuyler thought after years of hopeless pining, a weekend sounded awesome. He also suspected he just got attached to people too quickly when he decided to get attached at all, but he couldn't feel very sorry about it, even if he missed Hansel and Gretel with every breath. Feeling restless, he went through the house checking doors and windows for the third, or was it fourth, time. Just as he was about to start cleaning something because he had run out of everything else to do, he heard a car coming up the road. Grabbing his duffel and his laptop bag, though he was hoping to ignore the laptop all weekend, he headed outside and locked the front door. The snow loomed before him, and Schuyler conceded with a sigh that he probably should have finished shoveling the walk. Oh well, nothing for it. He muscled his way through the mess to the waiting Land Rover and clambered inside. Hi. Hey, Brady said with a smile, and handed over a steaming cup that smelled like coffee and chocolate and whipped cream. Stopped by a coffee place. Thought we could both use something hot and caffeinated. Wasn't sure what you liked, but I took a guess. Schuyler interrupted him with a happy sigh moan. It's perfect. Brady beamed. Thanks for agreeing to spend the weekend. Thanks for having me. I could have come up, you know. You didn't have to come get me. Laughing, carefully turning the vehicle around, Brady replied, Trust me, I am happy to be away from the pack for as long as I can manage. Everything is still, well, Tense would be putting it mildly. Schuyler nodded, fighting back the urge to ask about Hansel and Gretel. They weren't his, and he had to let them go, and this weekend was about Brady. I hope it calms down soon. The big rally is in another week, right? Yeah, next Saturday. Brady paused at the end of the drive and looked at him. Are you okay? I'm fine. Schuyler frowned at him. Why? Brady hesitated, then gave a small shrug. You haven't asked about Hansel and Gretel. Flinching, Schuyler said, Those aren't their names, and I miss them. It hurts. Asking won't bring them back. Anyway, I want to spend the next few days thinking about you. I didn't agree to this just so I could get information on them. Oh. Brady gave a smile that looked surprisingly shy. Well, I wouldn't have been upset if you'd asked. I know how hard it was for you to let them go. Any idiot could see that they were already in love with you. They're okay with the family watching them, but not happy. We're still working on a permanent home. He hesitated again, but only shook his head as though deciding against something. So I have dinner and dessert all planned through the weekend. I can take you back Sunday night or Monday, whichever you want. If you get totally sick of me sooner than that, I can get you home the moment you say the word. You have to say if you get sick of me, too, Schuyler reminded him. You'd have to really try to make me sick of you, Brady replied. The only people I don't want to see this weekend are my pack, as much as I love them. Pick a radio station. The abrupt shift took Schuyler a moment to process, but he finally reached out and turned on the radio, finding a station playing a mix of rock. He smiled at Brady's bright grin of approval. Schuyler sipped his mocha and stared out the window, admiring the landscape, grateful he was in a warm vehicle. The drive should have been awkward, but somehow it was the most relaxing drive Schuyler had ever been on. Ever since that day with Hansel and Gretel, the realization Brady didn't hate him, that it was just a big, stupid misunderstanding. Talking to him, just being around him, was swiftly becoming the easiest thing in the world. Even if Brady apparently had terrible taste in sports teams, something that had come up quickly during the drive. I hope you make better choices in movies. Action and comedy all the way. Schuyler smiled. Much better. Brady laughed as he turned the radio to a news station. He grimaced a couple of minutes later when the forecaster promised more snow. You may be stuck with me for more than a weekend if this crap keeps up. I should have thought of that. I really can't wait for spring, Schuyler said with a sigh. I hate the cold. Hate it, hate it, hate it. It's not that bad. It is when you're a cold-blooded creature in one form, and that translates to extreme sensitivity to cold in your warm-blooded form. It's hell switching between those particular elements in my forms. Brady opened his mouth, then snapped it shut again, cheeks going faintly pink. My house is kept plenty warm. Schuyler peered at him, curious as to what Brady had almost said, wondering if his first guess was the right one, because he would not be at all opposed to Brady keeping him warm. And not just because body heat was the best kind. That was probably moving too fast, though, especially considering their first date was a weekend together. He straightened in his seat as they pulled off the highway and drove down a long road that cut through dense forest. I'm so glad they finally paved this son of a bitch, Brady said. Until last year, it was still a dirt road, and let me tell you how much we all hated it. He turned a wide corner, and suddenly the Packlands came into view. A sprawling suburb-looking place with cozy brick homes of various shapes and sizes. Right in the middle of the loose oval was an enormous building with an old-fashioned-looking clock tower. It looks like a postcard. Brady beamed at him before reaching for the wallet he'd left in the center console and pulling out a card. It's pretty and I love it, but I think wolves should stop living apart. Thanks to those two morons, it will take a ridiculously long time to convince everyone else of that, but I still have hope we'll get there eventually. He rolled down his window as they reached the gatehouse, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out to examine the cart as Brady held it out. He waved them on a moment later, pushing a button to open the gates. Brady drove on through, turning left at an intersection to drive around the outermost edge of the oval houses. 20 minutes later, he pulled into the driveway of a large two-story house, parking next to a smaller, dark blue car that was mostly covered in snow. Home sweet home. Though I have to confess here that I suck at unpacking, so there's one or two rooms still filled with boxes. Before Skylar could grab it, Brady snagged his duffel and headed for the house. Skylar shook his head, but grabbed his laptop and followed quickly, shivering like crazy by the time they were inside and the door was shut. Brady gave him that crooked smile that was entirely too adorable and distracting. You really are completely helpless in the cold. Man, I bet you're one of those jerks that's all 100 degrees, perfect weather, while the rest of us are passed out on the sidewalk from heat stroke or trying to fit inside the freezer. Skylar burst out laughing. I don't think you fit. I love summer. I bask on rocks for hours, move to the shade, then back to the sun. In winter, I usually stay in bed as much as possible. He trailed off at the sudden, unmistakable look that flashed across Brady's face, no longer feeling cold. Skylar swallowed, licking his lips. You're not going to make getting out of bed any easier, are you? Brady stepped in closer, tracing one knuckle along the line of Skylar's cheekbone. I'm pretty sure I could get you out of bed with homemade pancakes and some bacon. The trick would be getting myself out of bed first. Skylar swallowed again and tried to reply, but couldn't seem to get his brain to function. You're making it very hard to behave, Brady rumbled, then backed up a couple of steps, hefted the duffel bag again, and made to continue further into the house. Surrendering to an impulse for once instead of thinking twice about it, Skylar replied, I don't remember saying I expected good behavior. It's not like I'm here because I'm hoping to just be friends. Brady whipped around, dropped the bag, and quickly closed the space between them, bracing one hand on the wall above Skylar's head, standing to one side so Skylar had plenty of room to move if he wanted. Skylar stayed right where he was and curled fingers into Brady's sweater. I mean, we can behave if you want. A good host does whatever his guest wants, Brady replied, and leaned down to kiss him softly, lips warm and still carrying a hint of hazelnut and coffee. Skylar rose up on his toes, impatient now that they'd opted out of good behavior. Brady made a low, rough sound of approval and obligingly kissed harder, deeper, shifting to stand in front of Skylar, lightly trapping him between the wall and Brady's body. Skylar took that as implicit permission to wind his arms around Brady's neck and hold fast. You're ridiculously warm,